Spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus took Peter, James, and John, and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And as he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus in reply, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them. From the cloud came a voice, This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone but Jesus alone with them. As they were coming down from the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone, except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Last summer, I went to Colorado with my friend Bill for a week of vacation. Really enjoyed it there here in Costa Spring. A friend had loaned me a cabin to use there. It was just spectacular to be there, to escape the terrible heat of the summertime and enjoy beautiful time, of course, beautiful scenery, and taking a walk in the woods on the mountains. Always something I really enjoyed to do. I know I'm very unique about that. Getting out of oppressive heat for a couple of weeks is always probably just so different from everybody else. I wonder what people in Colorado do for vacation, though, in the summertime. I think they probably take an anti-vacation. They probably go to Texas for 2 weeks during the summer, so that everybody goes, thank God for 50 weeks of Colorado up here. I really do love being I'm a Texan, so I grew up here and love being here. The summer times are not so great. I wouldn't mind spending 3 months there in Colorado during that time. But why can't we go to some mythical Colorado? Why isn't there a place that is permanently in the state of Colorado? I think the answer is that if something is extraordinarily beautiful to us, eventually it just becomes ordinary to us. Even the beautiful place just becomes a place that we get accustomed to. It no longer has the same kind of appeal to us and doesn't touch us very significantly, sort of slips through our hand. I think that's one of the truths of life, is the old saying, this too shall pass. And it's sometimes said to us in a moment of sorrow or crisis, this too shall pass. But it equally applies to this too shall pass about good things in life. Everything passes, whether it's beautiful things that we like to hold on to and not allow them to pass away, or bad things that we're very happy, seem like they just go on and on forever. This too shall pass. And so it can be a consolation if you're in the midst of a crisis. I'm not making light of it. But this too shall pass. If you're having great troubles, maybe in the family, the children, well, this too shall pass. But unfortunately, things are going really well, and everything is just as you hoped it would be. This too shall pass. Everything passes. Nothing is permanent. Our life is in a kind of a constant state of flux. And I think in some ways, that may be one of the messages, one of the meanings of the Lent season that we experience, that this too shall pass. Why is that? Well, I was wondering why we read the story of the Transfiguration of Christ on the second Sunday of Lent. And I know that one of the traditional answers to that has always been that it prepares the disciples to deal with the agony of the cross, the terror of the cross, and I'm certain that that is true. But we also read it, I think, for another reason. We start off the Lenten season with Jesus in the desert. And Jesus in the desert is transfigured there too. There he also has a mystical experience. But it seems to be an experience that is exactly opposite of the mystical experience that he has on the mountaintop. In the desert, he is transfigured by the heat, by the fasting, by the temptations that are put there before him, and he's no doubt burdened by them. They have described him as transfigured by that. But the image always comes to my mind, and he's somebody who's suffering through this terrible fast in the desert, has to be affected by that, in a certain sense transfigured by it. So in contrast to that, we have Jesus transfigured, literally transfigured, on the mountaintop, and he just seems to be exploding with light, the gospel indicates. Even his clothes become as light. And here he's transfigured in glory, and this is a total contrast to the image that we see of Jesus on the first Sunday of the Lent season. And so I think it tells us something about life itself. That life itself has both of those extremes, that there are times in our life when we are transfigured by the sorrows and the burdens and the difficulties that life entails, or we're transfigured by the joy and the happiness and the fulfillment that our life entails. We're transfigured by the absence of God in our life, by the seeming non-presence of Christ for us. And we're transfigured, of course, when we have that wonderful experience of Christ present to us, and we know that he is alive, we know that he is a real person, and not just an idea or a hoped-for presence in my life. And we all like to hold on to the Mount Tabor. We all like to hold on to the glorious experience of Christ. And we're a little bit afraid, very afraid maybe, of the experience of Jesus in the desert, how that becomes a burden and we don't want to have anything to do with it. But the meaning of Lent is that both things are a part of the life of Christ. Both things are a part of the Christian life. Jesus didn't live in ecstasy all the time. He didn't live in sorrow all of the time. He didn't live in the total presence of God all the time in his human nature. Nor did he live in the total absence of God all the time in his human nature. There was, I don't know if you could say there's a mix of those things, but there are various moments of it, and plenty of time in between. Most of it is Jesus' life, just like our own. There's plenty of time in between when we're living just an ordinary life. It doesn't seem to be so much the presence or the absence of God in our life. But I think there's something more that those stories tell us. They tell us also about the joys and the sorrows of life. Jesus in the desert is tempted to be the Messiah, the Savior, on his own terms. It says he is tempted, and so we have to take that seriously. He's tempted to be a Messiah, a wonder worker, and this is what a human being would think would be the way to accomplish what he wants to do, to accomplish greatness. He could be this wonderful, incredible superhuman that would call the attention of others, turning stones into bread, or leaping off of buildings, or having power over all the nations, becoming a victorious king. But he resists those temptations and says no to them. And what happens immediately after that? The angels come and they minister to him. They bring him consolation. He experiences some peace, some happiness, some joy there in the midst of all of his sorrows. In contrast again to that, Jesus on the mountain, transfigured there in his glory, where he is revealed not as somebody trying to be God, not as somebody trying to claim authority for himself, but actually revealed as God. I guess the message of the story is that his divinity is revealed to his disciples, and of course revealed to us. But it says there that they speak to him, Elijah and Moses, the two great figures of the Old Testament, as the tradition has it, that they are the law and the prophets. They speak to him, and Matthew and Luke will make it a little clearer. They speak to him about his death in Jerusalem. That in the midst of their glory, they're reminded that he has to suffer death. That he's reminded this is not the permanent state, and that his life will end on the cross. I think that should help us to recognize